Welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, January 30th. Peace or war between China and Japan. This blind rights lawyer awarded for his human rights work. And China's religious persecution in focus in the EU. Mixed signals continue to emerge about Japan and China's territorial conflict in the East China Sea. Both sides have talked about maintaining stability and peaceful resolutions, but recent moves by the Chinese Navy are saying otherwise. Here's more.
During a television talk show late Tuesday, new Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he wants to meet with Chinese leaders. He's looking to simmer the territorial dispute over the Senkaku, also known as the Diaoyu Islands, before tensions boil over. Abe said there is, quote, no room for negotiations, quote, over Japan's current control of the islands. But according to the Kyodo News Agency on Wednesday, he hopes to find a way forward with a, quote, strategic partnership of mutual benefit, quote. However, Xi Jinping said in his first public speech on Monday that he will not negotiate with foreign powers over China's, quote, core national interests, quote. These include crushing independence movements in Tibet and Xinjiang, as well as Taiwan's continued autonomy. However, Xi did not specifically mention the islands. Meanwhile, the Chinese regime announced it would continue with scheduled deep-sea naval exercises. Chinese ships will pass close by the contested islands, a potential provocation to Japan. In a separate report, state-run Xinhua News Agency says a missile destroyer and 2 missile warships would be involved in the training exercises. Prime Minister Abe sent an envoy to China last week with a letter for Xi Jinping. It's believed both sides are looking to ease tensions over the dispute that have many concerned would lead to war.
Last April, a tense diplomatic standoff in China made headlines around the world. At stake was a blind, self-taught human rights lawyer in a country where that title can spell trouble. Chen Guangcheng has been safe in the U.S. for quite some time now, and on Tuesday his work was recognized in Washington, D.C.
Blind Chinese activist Chen Guangcheng received the Lantos Human Rights Prize on Tuesday. The prestigious Rights Award is named after the late U.S. congressman and avid advocate for human rights. Chen received the medal from Hollywood star and Tibet activist Richard Gere at a Capitol Hill ceremony.
The man we're honoring today is someone who has inspired me and us in an extraordinary way, and I'm so happy to be here to give him the Lantos Human Rights Prize.
Blind from infancy and self-taught in law, Chen became known as the barefoot lawyer. He is best known for exposing the violent enforcement of China's one-child policy. Chen also advocated land rights and the welfare of the poor. Gere is an advisory board member of the Lantos Foundation. He awarded the prize to Chen with the late senator's wife, Mrs. Annette Lantos. Chen attended the ceremony with his wife and 2 children. He urged governments around the world, as well as the Chinese people, to push for human rights in China.
Social progress does not come from those in power. Whether or not they wish it to be the case, China will see a transformation. How do we bring this transformation? I believe the most important thing is to shift our attention from the leadership to the people.
After 4 years in prison and 19 months of house arrest and abuse, Chen escaped his home village in Shandong province last April. He made his way to the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, sparking a diplomatic crisis. The 41-year-old was eventually allowed to leave China with his family. He's currently studying law as a fellow at New York University.
Chinese law enforcement has a reputation for flouting proper legal procedures. Now, a document reportedly leaked from a police bureau in eastern China suggests these behaviors are actually being encouraged.
This leaked document allegedly comes from the Public Security Bureau of Shandong Province. It's marked confidential and, if authentic, it exposes a practice by local police that actually breaks Chinese law. The document tells Shandong police to strike hard against 3 groups of people: underground religious followers, political dissidents, and persecuted Falun Gong practitioners. Essentially, police can arrest individuals first without any cause. They can also skip the paperwork and prepare them later. This violates China's criminal procedural laws. For individuals who have traveled overseas, police are told to monitor their family members in China via telephone, mail, and the internet. Family can be detained if they don't cooperate with authorities trying to coerce individuals to return to China. The document is dated 2013 and was first published on Boxun.com. It's an overseas Chinese news portal. Boxun says an anonymous source provided the document to, quote, stop more people from being harmed.
Perhaps the person's conscience is pressured after being aware of this illegal directive that forces police to break the law. With this document, now public authorities could be discouraged from committing more crimes.
In reality, Chinese police and security forces are already notorious for making arbitrary arrests. But the leaked directive suggests these practices are actually condoned and encouraged. This document specifies the Strike Hard campaign began this January and flies in the face of recent pledges of Chinese leaders to implement the rule of law in the country.
And now from the seat of the European Parliament in Brussels, a forum on religious persecution in China. One issue highlighted that just starting to get worldwide attention, China's state-run hospitals killing innocent people and selling their organs.
People who are behind this are criminals. This is a crime against humanity.
At this forum held at the European Parliament in Brussels on January 29th, doctors, politicians, and human rights defenders discussed how prisoners of conscience in China are persecuted, tortured, and in some cases, killed for their organs.
If we don't take knowledge seriously about this fact and these practices, we have become morally and politically co-responsible for what is going on.
Enver Tohti was a surgeon in China in the 90s. He was ordered to remove organs from living people for transplants. At the time, he didn't realize the patients were prisoners of conscience, persecuted for their religion. Later, he stepped forward and testified to help stop the practice.
I think as a doctor, you should save the patient. But on a certain point of view, I killed that person. He died after I took away his life and 2 kidneys. For me, it is a kind of blasphemy for my duties as a doctor. So for many years in my heart, I felt very heavy.
Allegations of forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience were first reported in the mainstream in 2006. Independent investigators David Kilgore and David Matus concluded that more than 40,000 innocent people had been killed for their organs. Most of the victims practiced Falun Gong. Investigative journalist Ethan Goodman says that in addition to Falun Gong, Uyghurs and House Christians have also been victims of forced organ harvesting. And he says there are ways to stop it internationally.
The obvious point, and I think this is going to happen, as I say, in Australia first, is to criminalize anyone. If you want to get an organ in China, you're a criminal. It's that simple.
Although organ harvesting in China has been happening for more than a decade, it's only recently started to get worldwide attention.
What is the different situation now? Many doctors stand up to talk about this issue. The international community could not ignore it because not only law experts, but lawyers and also human rights organizations all raise up this issue now. We can feel apparently the international community is very concerned about this matter. Why? We have collected 166,000 signatures in only 45 days.
This forum in Brussels follows a U.S. congressional hearing on the issue last September. NTD News, Brussels, Belgium.
From the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
And coming up after the break, China's military at high risk of corruption. Swedish carmaker Volvo enters a joint venture in China. And what's inside these cans marketed to fight Beijing's bad air. And welcome back. Swedish carmaker Volvo announced it will buy 45% of Dongfeng Motor. It's a Chinese state-owned company with a large share of China's truck market. Volvo says the acquisition will make it the largest truck maker in the world. But 2 Swedish funds with stocks in Volvo are not happy about the deal. The Norwegian Oil Fund and Swedish 7th AP Fund have blacklisted Dongfeng. They say it has sold trucks in war zones of Sudan, breaking an UN arms embargo against the country. The 2 Swedish funds will not buy stock in Dongfeng, but they've not indicated they will give up their shares in Volvo either. The deal has yet to be approved by the Chinese regime. The Chinese army has been flexing its muscles recently amidst its sovereignty rows with neighboring countries. But despite the posturing, an international study has found that the People's Liberation Army is at high risk of corruption because it lacks political oversight.
China's military has been identified as high risk, according to a report released on Tuesday by Transparency International. Of 82 countries surveyed, 57, that's 70%, lack necessary safeguards to prevent corruption in their militaries. The People's Liberation Army in China is one of the worst. Chief editor of the China Affairs magazine Wu Fan says that's because the Chinese military is controlled by the Communist Party.
The Chinese military is not for national defense. Rather, it defends the Communist Party and is controlled by it. The Communist Party itself is rampant with corruption. So, of course, this flows on to the military.
Transparency International says the PLA has little political oversight and no whistleblower mechanism to bring cases of corruption to light.
The Chinese military is very closed off and is out of reach of Chinese laws. Only the Communist Party's military commission has control over it. It also has been given more and more budget each year, a significant portion of which becomes embezzled.
With 2.3 million members, the PLA is the world's largest active army. Officially, China's military was budgeted 670 billion yuan in 2012, up 11.2%. China has been caught up in an increasingly hostile territorial dispute over islands in the East and South China Seas. It's seen China scramble fighter jets in the region as well as planning a series of naval exercises.
Beijing residents are getting increasingly concerned as smog continues to worsen. This week again, air quality has reached dangerous levels. It may be little wonder after new findings that China is heavily reliant on coal.
The smog crisis in Beijing continues with the air quality index hovering over 400 around noon on Tuesday. The reading is on an index that measures particulate matter in the air with a diameter of 2.5 micrometers, known as PM2.5. A level of 300 is considered dangerous, while the World Health Organization recommends a daily level of no more than 20. Air quality readings from the U.S. Embassy in Beijing peaked at an index level of 475 at 1 p.m. local time. On January 12th, levels exceeded 700, causing a public outcry. Beijing's Children's Hospital has seen a significant increase in the number of child patients. Parents holding babies and young children are sitting in the corridor beside the respiratory ward while many children are on intravenous drips. Hu Chengping is worried about her daughter's skin disease.
Of course I'm worried. My child has a skin allergy. Before, she very rarely experienced symptoms, but the doctors said that with the recent air quality getting worse, there are more and more patients suffering from this condition.
Nearly 50% of patients in the outpatient ward are suffering from respiratory diseases. High PM2.5 levels in the atmosphere can cause acute respiratory diseases, including cardiopulmonary disease and lung cancer. Beijing resident Wo Xiaoling says the authorities need to take steps to control pollution.
They need to plan properly, including construction, traffic, and other aspects to decrease the pollution as much as possible. In the past, there used to be a blue sky, but now we never see the color of the sky. There are really too many elderly people and children getting ill.
Emissions from coal-powered factories and heating plants and fumes from millions of vehicles are causing the dense haze in Beijing. Data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration shows coal consumption in China alone equals the combined consumption of the rest of the world. Coal is much cheaper and is largely used in developing countries like China, despite the harm coal causes to human health and the environment.
And some innovative ideas have come out of China's air pollution problem, and the latest one is being peddled by one of China's biggest philanthropists. But can it really work?
Move over air filters and microparticle filtering masks. Beijing residents now have another option for fresh, clean air. All they need to do is unseal these cans and a waft of unpolluted air will be instantly available. At least, that's what this Chinese philanthropist is promising. Chen Guangcheng's canned air has become the latest smog-fighting measure for Beijing's wary residents. The multimillionaire says it's a statement about China's polluted environment.
Selling this air, I'm using an exaggerated method, a principle, to tell everyone that if we don't start protecting the air in our environment, in 10 years our descendants will all be wearing gas masks.
Known for his showy charity and publicity-seeking stunts, Chen's critics say this is just his latest gimmick. But Chen says it's not about him, it's about setting an example.
Nothing I do is for fame or for personal benefit. I just want to use the years I have left in my life to tell more people to protect the environment, to be good people, have good hearts and do good deeds.
Air quality in Beijing has fallen again after an all-time low 3 weeks ago. Canned air may not be the solution to the air pollution problem, but some say the point gets across.
When I first saw it, I thought it was a drink. I wouldn't have imagined it was fresh air. It's really great. It reminds people to use less fuel and to do what they can for Beijing's air. I hope everyone can work together.
Chen says the canned air comes from less polluted, rural areas like the Tibetan Plateau and northern Shanxi province. Each pop of fresh air will set you back 45 yuan, or about $7. Chen says he will donate 80 cents back to the rural regions.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more on China-related topics, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is a segment of the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party. Stay tuned.